We are in a dangerous game. People are talking about another Cold War, a warm war, possibility of things perhaps upgrading to cyber warfare and the like. What do you think the next few steps of this chess game are?
Well, every time we've thrown out Russian spies in the past from their embassy and from their trade delegation up in North London, we did it in 71, we did it in 85. They will exact reprisals on us, which usually means throwing out people from our embassy in Moscow or maybe one of our consulates in Russia. So I think the next move within this game of chess, I don't think it really deserves to be called chess, but anyway, the next move is likely to be an announcement in Moscow that they're going to throw some people out from our embassy there. Will they throw out our ambassador? I don't think so, because they will still want to keep the lines of communication open with London.
And that's crucial, isn't it? That Theresa May left herself a lot of room for manoeuvre and left those lines of communication open. But look, there's no love lost, but there hasn't been for quite a long time. Alexander Litvinenko onwards from 2006. So where does this go? Because there is talk of Russia insisting on they want to have some samples of this Novichok nerve agent, saying, nothing to do with us, Gov. I think I'm paraphrasing, of course, Sir Christopher. But the reality is that an independent verification by the Russians isn't going to convince anyone on the world scene, is it?
No, it's not, because we try to play it by the book, if you like, with due process at the time of the Litvinenko case in 2006, with British policemen going to Moscow, seeking the cooperation of the Russians. And all they did when we identified the two main suspects whom we wished to bring back to London for questioning was to give these guys parliamentary immunity so they couldn't be extradited. So we've been that way before, and the way we're going now is the only way we can against this kind of attack. I think what you have to say is, as long as I can remember, as long as I have been an adult, the natural condition of the relationship with Russia, and before that the Soviet Union, has been a cool one. It has never been warm and friendly. It's always been cool, and the only thing to measure is the degrees of ice attaching to the relationship. Well, we've got a lot of ice around the relationship now, and it's going to stay that way, I guess, probably for a few years, and then slowly the two sides will try to take steps to warm things up again. But it's not just going back to Litvinenko that things have been cold. It goes a long, long way back beyond that.
How much of this is about appearances ahead of a presidential election campaign? The election is on Sunday, of course, though, again, Vladimir Putin, everyone says he's going to win it hands down. What a surprise in his country. So why he would need to play this strongman role with us here in Britain, who knows? How much of this is about economics and the limitations of what we can do? We've got all this Russian money here in London, in the property market, in our banks. We've also got a heck of a lot of imports of gas from Russia, as does most of the European Union. How much is the money talking rather than the military talking?
Well, I think the way in which Theresa May has handled this is to say we, the Brits, are prepared to take a financial or an economic hit to get the message over to the Russians that this kind of behaviour in the UK is totally unacceptable. Excuse me. So I don't know exactly what the cost will be, but I have to say to you, Julia, that good relations are not an end in themselves. It's not like you put a lovely vase on the mantelpiece and you stand there and look at it every day and say, oh, that's a beautiful relationship. Now, good relations exist for a purpose. And if the price we have to pay for good relations, in quotes, is to suffer these assassination attempts on British territory, then those good relations aren't worth the candle. So I think we have to accept that across the board now, the relationship with Russia is going to be strained for some time to come. It's not a comfortable situation because the kind of rules of behavior that existed in the old Cold War, although that was a dangerous time, we had all kinds of agreements and protocols to stop war by misunderstanding or miscalculation. A lot of those things don't exist anymore. So we're living in a bit of a diplomatic jungle as far as the Russians.
Well, and even with the Americans, they're concerned that although Rex Tillerson, the former US Secretary of State, sacked publicly on Monday, that even though that he had come out very much in support of us, there were concerns about whether Donald Trump would, whether the White House would after he was sacked. We did see, though, from the American representative of the UN, Nikki Haley, that they were talking about absolute solidarity with us, very, very firm language, very supportive. Not quite so much support from the French, it has to be said, but we live in very uncertain diplomatic times, don't we?
Yeah, we do. I mean, the White House statement of solidarity, I thought was as much as almost better than we could have expected from a Donald Trump administration. So that's good. The French have been like the French. I think
you're allowed to say that as a diplomat.
Of course, I am allowed to say that. I'm also allowed to say that as someone who's married to a woman who's half French.
Okay,
so
all right then.
I may get beaten up after this, but there you go. But the French have always wanted to preserve a kind of special relationship with Russia, and before then with the Soviet Union. And I think that plays a role in the way they've reacted.
And they, for some reason, seem to think that trumps the need to protect a close ally that's just had a chemical attack on their soil. I mean, that's what I find extraordinary.
No, but I think behind the scenes you will be seeing, even now, very close British and French cooperation, and with the Germans as well and others, on exactly what this is, what is its substance, what is the evidence, and what can we all do to try and stop the Russians, who have a long tradition of overseas assassination, from doing this again.
Well, indeed, and perhaps we should have perhaps been stronger rather sooner. Now, the Russian Foreign Ministry has very much poo-pooed, I think that's the technical term, the claims of the British government, and actually include their claims that Russia had involvement as insane. They seem to have quite a lot of support from Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of Her Majesty's official opposition yesterday in the House of Commons, although he didn't have much support from his own backbenchers. I'm going to be talking to one of those next. What did you make of the scenes in the House of Commons yesterday when Jeremy Corbyn really questioned a number of the things that the Prime Minister has said? Obviously, the role of MPs is to, and the opposition is to, question the government. But did you think it was, should we say, seemly?
I thought this was a time for the House of Commons on all sides to show solidarity behind the government. I think it's perfectly legitimate of the opposition or any of the other parties to come along to the government, and I assume they've done this already, to say, let's see the evidence, let's be clear about the nature of the threat. I think that's perfectly legitimate. But when the moment comes to take a stand against, I'm afraid to say, a malign power like Russia, you don't want the leader of the opposition popping up and questioning the government's evidence and motivation. I think that was a misstep by him, and I don't think it'll, on the whole, go down very well in the country.
Just finally, a lot of damage was done in terms of trust in the government, trust in official documents and the intelligence services with that Iraq WMD dossier published ahead of the Iraq War 2003. That obviously was playing, and a lot of people tweeting me saying, well, what about the dossier? How can we trust what the government says? What would you say to that?
Well, first thing I would say, it was a different government. Secondly, I would say we have the substance in our hands. This nerve agent exists, and it's in a laboratory in Porton Down. In the run-up to the Iraq War and during the Iraq War, we could never find bloody stuff at all. So there is no comparison between the failure to find weapons of mass destruction before and during the Iraq War and the situation right now. We have had an attack using a nerve agent. We have bits of the nerve agent being examined in our laboratories. So there is no comparison between the two events in 2003 and now in 2018.